Shaniqua Matthews.
My name, no, sorry. Let me do that over. Okay, now I gotta stop laughing. Sorry. Okay, forgive me. My name is Shaniqua.
Oh, you don't seem like a Shaniqua. You don't sound like a Shaniqua. You don't look like a Shaniqua. Or, oh, that's such a beautiful name. And not that I don't believe that. I don't believe them. I'll just be honest about it. Or they'll say, oh, that's a very interesting name. Oh, well, what does it mean? Where did you get it from? And just all this stuff. And it's like, if my name was Ashley, you would not be asking me all these questions and making all these comments. So why do we have to do it now? I get looks or judgments are made. And celebrities can name their kid Apple, and like that's normal.
When I hear the name Shaniqua, I think of someone from the hood, low-income community, but I also think of perseverance in facing adversity and someone who's really resilient.
In all honesty, I think of like a homegirl, like someone who is always there for you, someone who's always willing to ride out with you, someone who's going to be there for you no matter what.
What I think when I hear the name Shaniqua, I think family. One of my closest little cousins, her name is Shaniqua, and she's the smartest, most just outgoing person that I know. I think of my good friend Shaniqua that's on the board of the UNC alumni and does all of these other amazing things as well. And also, on the flip side, I think of all the, the stereotypes that come along with that name too.
Oh, hi, girlfriend. It's Shaniqua here, and today I'm gonna tell you the top 60 ghetto black names.
My name is Chavez Adams. When I think of Shaniqua, I think of someone from my hometown, a very small hometown, but very urbanized. So when I think of Shaniqua, I think of one of my friends back at home.
What comes to mind when you just hear any name that is outside of course, your Jennifer and your Erica, first automatic assumption you get is, dang, her mama must be hood.
I mean, I don't know a ton of Shaniquas, but the ones I've never met a Shaniqua that is snapping her fingers and rolling her neck and all of that. So, and I don't think most of the people who know me, who don't know a ton of Shaniquas, I don't think that's their version of it either. But it's just tough because I feel like I have to prove to everyone that like women with names like mine are, I hate to say worthy, like we are worthy of the same respect that everyone else is given, but I hate to even have to do that. I was talking to my mother. She was at the school for some award ceremony or something. And I was just chatting with her and I happened to bring up the story about the newspaper. So when I was elected BSM president, I ran unopposed, and our student newspaper, the Daily Tar Heel, wanted to do an article, a story. And so, I put on a Carolina hoodie and went and did the story. They took a picture and it ran in the newspaper the next day. And at this time we had an online, you could, read the articles online, but you could comment anonymously. And someone wrote under my picture, so many people were just talking about how I did not respect the university because I wore a Carolina hoodie instead of dressing up, where, I'm pretty sure the student body, like all these other student leaders had worn whatever they want, and most people would say she's, got on her Carolina attire. I mean, why is that not appropriate? But for whatever reasons, everyone was, up in arms about it. And someone put under the picture, oh, she's president of the Black student movement, and of course her name is Shaniqua. I could like see the hurt in her eyes, and that, I just was like, it's not like, if people want to judge me, that's fine. And like, I wouldn't have told her that story if I knew it was going to affect her. But like from that point on, I was just like, you know what, this is my name. My mother gave it to me, and it is what it is. And if someone's going to make a judgment about me based off that, I mean, that's more of their problem, because when has a name ever dictated the trajectory of your entire life?
One of my responsibilities was supporting management and talent acquisition. And this was in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, early 2000s. And we would, hire, particularly in entry-level positions. You would see people, submitting applications, resumes for positions, named Shaniqua, and other culturally unique names.
When I first tell them my name's Shaniqua, their first response is, "Oh, like you ghetto," So for a while, it used to make me feel like that's not me at all. Like my name kind of represents me because it's unique and it's bold and that's my personality. But at the same time, that's like they also take it as me being uneducated or ghetto or ratchet, as you want to call it, and that's not me at all. I'm not any of those things.
Hey yo, this is your girl Nane.
This is your girl Shaniqua.
And we finna teach you how to be ghetto fabulous.
What I think people mean when they say ghetto is I think they mean loud, obnoxious, ignorant, and all of those things. But why, like, a ghetto is a noun, and somehow we turned it into an adjective for, most people use it for loud, obnoxious, ignorant, plus Black people. Because white people fit that mold too, and they're not called ghetto. They're just called whatever those adjectives are. And that's why I try not to use that word, because I don't think it means what people use it as. And I hate the word. And so, I try not to use it. And I guess I've been socialized, so sometimes it's hard to let go of those things. But I think it's an unfair word that is only used for Black people. And oftentimes I think people who can't say the word use it as their way of like getting around it, to say what it is they mean, an insult to Black people. It's just becoming more popular. Like when I was younger and Bow Wow had that song Ghetto Girl, or however, I think that was the name of it, something like that. And he was like, I love the girls with the ghetto names, or something like that.
I like them G-H-E-T-T-O. Now believe me, she got.
What does that even mean? I think whenever I can't fully wrap my brain around, like, what does it mean? Like when people make assumptions about me, like, why are you doing that? When I can't get into it and figure out what it is, I just try to stay away from it, because I want to be informed on like every aspect of my vocabulary and what I'm saying, and my intent to really come across as what I'm trying to say.
I think what annoys me most about the stereotypes that come with being named Shaniqua is that people say you're so articulate, and I hate when anyone tells a Black person that they're articulate to begin with. No, I just hate it when anyone says that to begin with. But more so when they just assume that because your name is Shaniqua, you are unattractive. They assume because your name is Shaniqua, you are this raging swamp donkey and you don't know, what fork to use at a fancy table setting, or you've never been around. And it just bothers me so much. But I also think that we as Black people, we have subconsciously been taught the unfortunate survival skill of code switching, whereas white people don't have to code switch because they have created the code. You know what I'm saying? I can, off camera, I can be like, Phil, what's up? What's going on? But I can't do that on camera. I can't do that at my office. You know what I'm saying? There's a certain part of you that you have to turn off in order to succeed. There's a certain part of you that you have to distance yourself from. You have to distance yourself from the Shaniqua part of you in order for you to be able to bring home a check. You know what I'm saying? Code switching is a difference between, canned foods and Whole Foods.
We live in a very biased community. It is not a post-racial America, as people would like us to believe. It's far from that, and people make assumptions. They make assumptions about your educational level, about where you come from, about how you may speak, about how you may carry yourself, just on a name. And And anytime, unfortunately, in this country, if your name is viewed as ethnic, and it might not be Shaniqua, it might be Moisha, or it might be Hassan, it's weighed differently.
I got my name from my brother. My brother's about 5 years older than me. One day they was watching the Cosby Show, and it was like, my brother's name is Travaris. And we was watching the Cosby Show, and a girl named was Shaniqua on there. He was like, Mommy, why don't we name my sister Traniqua? And that's my name.
For a minute, I used to cover my name when I first started working at Cracker Barrel. It's kind of sad, but I used to cover with my book, with my little notepad when I write the orders down with. And I would say, hey, my name is Ray, or Shaniqua, if you want to call me that. And then when I did it the other way, and I said, hey, my name is Shaniqua, when I showed them my name, they kind of looked at me like, what? And then you will be, oh my goodness. Then you'll be surprised how many times I've had African-American guests treat me terribly because they stereotype me first. Oh, that's Shaniqua. You know, immediately they thought, Shaniqua, oh, I already know she's gonna have bad service, she's gonna have an attitude, she's gonna just do the least she can do. Can I get a new server, please? And it's like, I mean, people don't understand that you can really hurt somebody's feelings like that. You know what I'm saying? You can really, I guess, almost tear down a person and make them feel less of what they are, less valued, because, you know, just because their name is whatever, and it may be a little difficult to spell or to say, or because they're, I guess, even just being an African-American person, it's always like that.
People are less judgmental when they get to know me. And then I think when I open my mouth, if they made assumptions, those are gone. But I think people still make just as many assumptions. I met one of my coworkers' families the other day, and I introduced myself, and she was like, oh, you don't look like a Shaniqua. I was like, all right, I'm at work. I'm not dealing with this right now. So I just walked out of the room. But people still, yeah, they still just make assumptions. And I really don't know where, maybe I was too young to know what was going on culturally, but I don't know where it came from.
African heritage, whether you're east, west, north, or south, was all about naming people that had meaning. And so if sometimes it was the day of the week that you were, whatever day of the week you were born, sometimes it was being named after an important relative who had passed away. Sometimes the name had to do with some major event happening that year, or what you wanted that child, the attributes that you wanted that child to have. And so the naming and the naming ceremonies were all an important part of African ancestry. And this continued among a number of free blacks throughout the 19th and into the 20th century. And it became really a part of what we would call Black nationalism, because Black nationalism was not just about a nation. It was about your awareness and identity as being a part of a specific group of people who were empowered.
I guess we look at the whole idea of the African worldview and the African American oral tradition that goes back to West Africa and West African naming practices, where the parents deliberately chose a name that was unique and different and innovative for their children, because they felt that names had a meaning, and names sort of predicted the fate of the child. And so they took, weeks to come up with a name for a child that was in fact creative and unique. The name Keisha was essentially the model for African-American female names. And we see that by the end of the 60s, going into the 70s, into the mid-70s, we saw the presence of LA in front of the prefix LA, La, in front of Keisha, forming La Keisha. And then by the end of the end of the 80s and going into the 90s, we saw the Sha, H-H-S-H-A, replace the LA as a prefix for Shakisha and so forth. And I think this was still an extension of Africanized or African-sounding names.
Using your child's name as a first and one of the most important decisions you make as a parent, and the very, very first one. It's something that should not be taken lightly. It's something that I have been thinking about since I was about, 10 years old. It's a very grand thing. It's a gift that you're bestowing on this little being, and it's hard to kind of project who you want this child to be when you're holding, a 6 or 7 pound baby in your hand. But you have to remember that this name is a moniker that's going to carry him through life.
So how did you get your name?
Well, the name Chandrika comes from my aunt, my great aunt. She named me that. My mother went to the hospital when she went into labor. She went to the hospital. My aunt, who was home from Germany, came with her to the hospital and said, hey, name her Chandrika. That was not supposed to be my name, but that's what I ended up with.
What was supposed to be your name?
My name was supposed to be Sherelle.
Sherelle.
Yeah, but because my parents was teenagers when I was born, they were having like a little beef. And when my mother went into labor, she did not tell my father that she went into labor. So when she went to the hospital, my aunt went with her, and I guess she said, I'm gonna fix him. I ain't gonna name her Sherelle, and I ended up with Chandrika.
Spell it for me. I know how it's spelled, because I know, go ahead. How does it?
SHAUNDRIKAA with an accent mark across the A.
My full government name is Tiandria Norrington, and I go by Tia on purpose. I decided that a long time ago because on the first day of school and in the doctor's offices and everything else, no one can pronounce it. It's spelled Tiandrea. And when people see that on paper, I've heard, all different types of pronunciations. I've heard Tiandre, I've heard Tiandrea, just all these other crazy things, and it's just like, just call me Tia, and that's become my go-to response because it's just easier than dealing with people trying to learn or figure out my name. It's just a whole thing. So yeah, my parents were creative. Yay!
I used to want to give my child a unique name, but now I want to give them something unique, but something that's straight to the point, something easy to say, something that's universal amongst races, so that my child won't be judged off that base of the first time hearing the name, or my child won't be judged when they have to call in to check the status of their application.
I find that some of the names that parents have given their children are the direct result of what I believe is illiteracy, just complete ignorance, such as naming a child Chlamydia. Oh, that's a cute name. But you're telling me you don't know that you just named your child after an STD. What is wrong with you? And there are some other names I've seen where your private parts, people don't know the proper names. And so when they see the proper name, they think it's a pretty name, but they still don't know what it is. And they'll put an ending to it. And I actually had a student whose name was a woman's private part with an ending to it. So it was VAG and Ella.
So at the time when I was pregnant with my daughter, we were living in Cincinnati, Ohio. I had another friend who was a documentary filmmaker, and the film that she made during that time that we were there was a film about how 18 African-American men were shot by the police during the time when we were in Cincinnati. So I was very cognizant of the place where we were at that time. And I made a couple of really key decisions. One, we were getting out of Cincinnati, Ohio, that I did not want my daughter raised in that environment. And two, that I was going to continue to gift her name in the same way that my family, that I wasn't going to give up that tradition. So my daughter's name is Sophia Joy Mann. I spell her Sophia very differently. It's spelled with a traditional African spelling where there's a consonant, a vowel, a consonant, a vowel, a consonant, a vowel. Her name is Sofia. And that was meaningful, but a lot of people don't know the real story behind her name was that I dreamed her name. And that is also a very African-American thing, is that Names are very meaningful in our culture, and you don't just put a label on somebody because you pick it out of a book, or it comes from somebody around you. So she's named after a dream that I had about her coming into the world and my best friend growing up. Her joy is spelled J-O-I.
All my children are Kalfani, destined to rule. They know when I say to them, I said, that's not a Kalfani behavior. Then they know that means that they're destined to rule. And it's not necessarily destined to rule as though they're above anyone, but it's as a people that we collectively are transforming the world in front of us and around us, and that we have to be confident that what we do has the ability to transform the world. And so that, and we have to be confident that we have the ability to rule. And so we have to first rule yourself. And so destined to rule means ruling the self, your family, and your community. And so therefore we collectively move forward on a set of rules that we know that Kalfani is structured within. And so that I think that for those children who have those types of names, those rhythmic names, which many of them I have no problem with necessarily, is beautiful, but then, when we still have an oppressed mentality, we think that when we're trying to escape our oppression, to call them ghetto is the solution. But really, is that the solution or not? They only say that it's ghetto because we don't understand tonal languages in Africa. If all the people who say that it's ghetto understood these tonal languages, they would listen to it and hear that it sounds just like some of the other names in other languages, whether it's Yoruba, or Ifa, or Yoruba, or Igbo, or Akan, or Zulu, or any of these other languages. You have many names that have the same rhythm and cadence of a Shaniqua.
I named my son a name that meant something to me. So my son's name is Justice. But when I say that, I just realized that even the mother or father naming their child Shaquasia or whatever, that name meant something to them as well. So I just named my son something that meant something to me, and I hoped it worked out. But I definitely remember, again, going through that same feeling of, okay, what am I going to name him? I don't want to put him in the position that I was in. But I kind of have a conflict because I feel that way on one hand, but the other hand, I feel like, well, why should I have to name him something so other people are comfortable?
I was married before, and his name was Tyrone, so normally that name is considered with a black man, and he was. With that, when we had children, basically he told me he wants his children to have normal names because on applications, through school, high school, college, army, military, wherever you go, the first thing they see is they see your name. And he wants everything else to speak besides their name. So what they've done, what they have accomplished, and your name should have nothing to do with that. So their name, Courtney, Nicholas, and Alexander, and that way they can, make achievements or get things that they deserve on their own basis.
When I hear the name Shaniqua, actually the first thing that comes to mind are my students. I'm a college and career counselor at a high school, predominantly black high school. I see a lot of unique names come across my desk. Obviously for privacy purposes, I can't say them. I wish I could right now. There are times that I sort of wonder, what were your parents thinking, in all honesty? Some, I look at them and I don't understand how we have so many consonants put together or, whatever. You wonder what people were thinking. And then I begin to wonder, especially as the students maybe are a senior or what have you, and they're looking for jobs, that sort of thing. It's okay, how can I help them? And I worry on their behalf that someone may weed them out, not realizing that they have a solid individual.
A person named Shaniqua or some other cultural names, Taniqua, Tamara, those culturally unique names, their resume, there would have to be so many really high points favorably high points on that resume in order for it to get passed on to, the next level. That resume generally was not taken as seriously as some others might have been. And it was, in retrospect, I realized that it was primarily because of that culturally unique name.
You got people like your girl Raven Simone out here looking crazy and sounding crazy, and her name is Raven. So don't worry about my name being Shaniqua. I've never not been proud of Shaniqua. I've never been ashamed of Shaniqua. I've never been scared of what people are going to perceive me as a Shaniqua. Most of the time, I walk in the room, hi, my name is Shaniqua, and they go, oh, okay. And whatever picture they had in their head, and then they see me, they immediately readjust. And it's on them. The onus is on them to do the changing, not on me.
I would hate on the first day of class to have to wait for the professor to get to my name, and then obviously, I always had to correct them, or they would just say McClendon.
Unfortunately, in the academic world, I hear too many teachers, whether it's teachers on the high school or elementary level or teachers at the college level, who derisively talk about these names. First of all, they don't know how to pronounce them, and then they see them through the lens of a stereotype. And the stereotype is often negative. And in their minds, they see this as of an inferior person, when often the student is an excellent student who does not exhibit any of these stereotypic images that people evoke from that name.
Growing up, my name was very difficult for me. Even for me, I remember in preschool, I loved food. So it was like lunchtime, so I ran to the front of the line and they were like, okay, in order to get your lunch, you have to spell your name. And I'm like, and I had to run to the back, I didn't know how to spell my name yet. And just even in school, like a librarian, I told her the first day of school was always hard to pronounce my name. They're like, Triniqua, like they never get it. So I tell them, I'm like, my name's Shaniqua. She's like, well, I'm just pronouncing it how your name is spelled. I'm like, but my name is still Shaniqua. She's like, well, I'm gonna call you Triniqua. And I'm just like, okay.
I've never been discriminated by, or I felt like I was discriminated because of my name by a teacher. Maybe because of my race, but not specifically my name. I remember this one teacher, she said, my name wrong. And then I said, it's Tia Moya. And she continued to call my name the wrong name. So I told her specifically to call me Tia because she couldn't say it.
My name is Khalifa. About for days, I didn't have a name because he and some other Muslim brothers prayed for my name. So that was something that I've always heard before I ever had this issue. That was something that was always told to me, and it was a very proud moment because in fact, Khalifa, which means ruler, is a man's name. So even just giving it to a girl kind of was a strong and bold statement. Well, the first thing when I tell people my name is Khalifa, immediately they want to know what my nickname is because there's an assumption that there is no way people walking around calling me Khalifa. So at a very young age, when I was 2, I did gymnastics. So that was like 1978. So there were really no black gymnasts, and I did it in Bergen County. So I was the only African-American girl doing gymnastics, person. So immediately they changed Khalifa to Leaf. Not really sure how that happened, but immediately that's who I became, and eventually that's who I was. So that's kind of what it was. And then as I got a little older, Paramus Catholic was predominantly white, maybe 5% black. And kind of the same thing happened when I started at Paramus Catholic. Same question. At this point, I'm 14, 15. What's your name? Khalifa. Well, what's your nickname? And the actual nickname I had given myself was Kiki. But that was self-given back in the 80s when I was gonna be a rapper. Some of these new rap chicks better be lucky I'm old. Cause if I had came out back in the day, they'd be working at the wash and fold. But, no. So it was Kiki Ski, but but that was at least a name that I felt like embraced who I wanted to be at that time, because Kiki Ski rhymed with MIC on the 1, 2, 3. So that's how I got Kiki, and that got kind of bumped down to Key, and that's who I stayed, up until now. For people who are uncomfortable calling me Khalifa, but for the most part, I don't have like a nickname. It's something that if you've known me when I was younger, and really it was a name I gave mostly people. Not many black people call me anything other than Khalifa.
Do you like your name?
No.
Okay. Have you ever liked your name?
Maybe up until I was like about 5 years old.
Okay.
And then after then, I just was done with it because it has 11 letters.
Okay.
So when you in the kindergarten and you trying to learn how to write that, and everybody else is dismissed, and you still sitting there like D, R, it just, and from that point forward, I just never liked it.
Did you start going by something else?
Well, my father's side of the family always called me Sean, even though my name is not Sean-Drika, but they always called me Sean. And then my mother's side of the family always said Drika, so it was either one or the other.
It used to bother me, but now that's why I call myself Nene, because Nene is so much easier to say. After I graduated college, I rebranded myself as Nene, so I went planning on working internationally. So it'll be easier to say because I just get so many complications with my first name.
As an undergrad, I was at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and became involved with African Liberation Day and a bunch of events. I changed my name as an undergrad, and so that's when I took on the name Akil Kokiyi Kalfani, which means intelligent, one who uses reason to summons the people who are destined to rule. And that was really the foundings of my Pan-Africanist identity.
We give our names to our children, and then that becomes the continuation of what we do. These lessons are stored in our names, and as Baba said, in the songs. And so we must pass on that message, those songs, so that they can continue to uplift the youth.
Once I started working, I just called myself Shannon, because it was easier when people say, what's your name? And you always have to give your name. And I just say Shannon, because if I say Chandrika, it's like, what?
I found that when I first got out of law school, that was the time where my name really made me nervous, because then I started hearing stories about how people were having a hard time getting a job, just in general. And I'm sending out my resume to different places. But early on, fortunately, I've always gotten jobs in the beginning just because I met the right person at the right time. So my name didn't matter because I felt like they already met me. The first time I actually dealt with it, I kind of had like the double whammy in that I have the name I have, and it was maybe a year after 9/11. So I sent out my resume. It was the first time I didn't know the person. It was cold resume sending like most people do. And not one callback, not one. Nobody called me. And I remember immediately feeling like, oh my God, they probably assume I'm either some ghetto black girl, I knew they couldn't think I was a ghetto black girl because I have all of these degrees and accolades. But I always felt like they thought I wouldn't get along, like from an interpersonal relationship. Because I think that the real issue is they look at these resumes, they see what you've done. So you have to be at least somewhat intelligent. But I think they believe that someone who would name you Khalifa or some other type of name, they must be ghetto. So unfortunately, you come with school book knowledge, but I think there's an assumption that you don't know how to relate to in a predominantly white field. So you'll get there, hand snapping and being angry and aggressive. I mean, I remember at one point thinking, well, maybe I should put my picture on my resume. But I knew that was like so cheesy, but I was thinking, well, if they at least saw me, then they would know that I was one of them. And growing up the way I grew up, that was like a horrifying moment. But I've always tried to be honest with myself, and I was like, wow, I'm selling out. And I went so far that I sent the resume to the same places and I changed it. At the time, I was engaged to a guy whose last name was Williams. So I changed my resume, only the name, from Khalifa Shabazz to K-A-Y, because I didn't even want to put K period because I thought they might know what I was doing. So I put K-A-Y Williams. And 2 places, and I think I sent my resume to 3 or 4 places, 2 places that didn't call me before called me within days and wanted me to come in for an interview. I remember that was the first time I heard disappointment from my mother. I told her what I had done, and she said, but we didn't pray for K. We prayed for Khalifa. And you do this, what name are you going to put up there? What are they going to call you? What are you going to let them call you? And it's when it really became real about how you start to choose between your heritage, how America can make you choose between success and your culture.
I mean, they don't know. They're 6 or 10. They have no idea what it's going to do or how it's going to automatically, when somebody reads your name is Reason Smith. Exactly. But how, I don't know what discussion you're going to have.
That's when we are, or should realize that we're responsible for each other. Like when I run into kids like that in the school, I ask, what's your name? What does it mean? I don't know.
Yeah,
well, where did you get it from? My mother made it up. Well, if your mother made up the name, or your father made up the name, then tell them to make up a meaning for it. Or you come up with a meaning and you help them to understand, look, don't know why they named you this, but this is what that name could mean. You help give them some positivity about their being, their purpose of being.
You know, it's just like my man was saying here before. We got a baby coming, what we're gonna name him? I don't know, throw some letters in the box and let's start sorting them and see what we come up with. I think that is so wrong.
It is.
You know, I want my kid to be unique, so I'm gonna name her Unique. Okay.
And they can't spell it.
What was that? That is pure stupidity. To do that. But like you're saying, I do know some kids that have unique names, and they do have meanings. Okay, I have 6,000 people that I'm responsible for, and they have every name from A to Z, whatever it is. And in some of the hiring agencies right now, some of the hiring practices, as soon as some of these people hear one of those unique names, they push that name right off to the side of the list and say, oh, so I know what that means. I'm not hiring them. And then if they would rather just push them off to the side and hire nobody, or hire somebody that's named
Larry
Quincy Jones, okay?
Exactly.
Who has no qualifications at all, can't even push a cart down the street, and this person over here that's named Shaniqua has a master's degree, okay?
Exactly.
Now, how unfortunate it is for a society to be like that and for people to accept it.
When you have people who name their kids Orangelo and Lamangelo. Now, and this is real. This was on Good Morning America, and they were talking about names. And I'm like, who sits up there and name their kids Orangelo and Lamangelo, lemon jello and orange jello? And you're saying, really? But I knew whenever I had kids, I knew that my daughter was gonna have a name that was not Shaniqua or something like that, because I know the stigma behind it. Having worked in academia, I'm telling you, you are serious when you say they will look at your application and they will shift it to the side.
We would meet, go in a conference room, 4 or 5 hours, shuffling these resumes. And it was just kind of an unspoken rule. It was part of the organization culture that we were concerned that these people may not perform as well, that these people may not behave in a way that fit the organizational culture, or that these people would be difficult to manage. And so they were a pile aside.
We were having a hiring event going on. They were looking at some 40 people and different candidates, and I wasn't on the committee, but I happened to be an observer. And I noticed that they were rapidly going through and sorting these things out and not, and they, have a stack of things, they look through them and stack them over here. And then they were reading these, and these weren't even reading, And I'm going, wait a minute, something doesn't make sense here. How can you, just that quick, say that they are not worth reading? No, what's the key behind this? So I went over and I picked up a couple of the packages and I looked at them, and I noticed, for example, that this particular person that was applying for an engineering job had an engineering degree. And so then I went over and I kind of looked at the other ones, and I noticed that this person had maybe a couple of years of engineering experience and no degree. And they were looking at this person as highly qualified. So, I asked the question and said, well, what's with this guy here? And of course, I think that when I said that, the person in charge kind of caught on and said, I guess, we must have overlooked that.
If I looked at a resume that was from, Rebecca, and one that was from Shaniqua, and everything on that resume was exactly the same, I believe that I would have said to my colleagues, take a second look at this one. I wouldn't have had to ask them to take a second look at Rebecca. I would have had to, for Shaniqua, though, kind of point out, look at this. This has some, though, kind of point out, look at this. This has some good qualities here. This has some good stuff that we might want to bring into the organization. I'd have to sell it a little bit harder.
I do have a set of coworkers that have no clue that my name is not Shannon, but my coworkers for the last 4 years, they know that my name is Chandrika. My current job that I'm in right now, the office manager was like, yeah, when your resume came through, I looked like, And she was like, and we looked you up on Facebook. She was like, but we couldn't find you. She was like, because when I saw that name, I'm like, look at this. And I'm like, wow, y'all really searched me on Facebook? She was like, yeah, we looked you up on Facebook. But then they were smart. They said, it's no way she probably using it. So they took the Sean off and just put Drika, and they found me. But again, what you found was not what you was expecting. So then it was like, oh, okay, yeah. And they called me in, and I've been here for the last going on 4 years. So it was like, yeah.
I lost an opportunity because of your name.
Exactly, because they was like, oh no, all these
I don't believe that my personal thoughts and views were really separate from how it played out in the workplace. In retrospect, I think I was guilty of believing the stereotypes. I was guilty of believing stereotypes about us, about African Americans. But it took some distance from the environment, some time away from the environment, and also me getting a broader perspective of the world for me to realize that, I bought into some stereotypes that I shouldn't have. It's particularly sad or poignant when I think back to know that they were done a disservice by me, by an African American who grew up during the Civil Rights Movement, who could not drink from certain drinking fountains. And yet I did a disservice to some young people that did not deserve it. So it's been a kind of a sad memory for me.
I sometimes wonder, let's just say I am Shaniqua and I go to nail school and what's up and I'm talking like this. Of all the things in the world, is that really that bad to be? Am I hurting you? Am I taking your money? Am I disrespecting you? We have been taught and we have been so conditioned to believe that this girl is so bad and the Katies are so good that we shame her in such a horrible way. This girl might be loud and this girl might be but she also might give you her last. You might have 20, you might need 20, she might give you 20, where Katie might have 20,000, all I can give you is 20. You know what I'm saying? Why is that girl such a bad thing?
Let us stop